Welcome to episode 31 of the Talent Intelligence Collective podcast. In this episode, I and my brilliant co-host Toby Coulshaw from Lightcast, with Alison taking a well-earned break, had the pleasure of speaking with Steve Kerwin, who leads the data and analytics organisation for Amazon's stores talent acquisition team. In the news segment, we explored thought-provoking topics, including the challenges of Trump's manufacturing revival plans amid critical skills shortages, with Deloitte projecting 1.9 million unfilled manufacturing jobs by 2033, Shopify's CEO refusing to approve new headcount unless teams demonstrate why AI can't do the work, and a cautionary tale about an AI shopping app founder who defrauded investors while using human contractors in the Philippines instead of actual AI. And in our conversation with Steve, we dove deep into the world of talent acquisition analytics and how data transforms decision making at scale, including his journey building Amazon's TA analytics capabilities over 8 years and the challenges of scaling data solutions to thousands of users, the critical importance of candidate experience data and how it impacts hiring success, his experience leading a diverse team of BI engineers, software developers and data engineers using a servant leadership approach, the disconnect between talent acquisition, HR and finance when it comes to operational forecasting and demand planning, and his practical advice for companies just beginning to build their analytics capabilities. And as ever, much more. So grab your favourite beverage, settle in for a masterclass in talent analytics, and join us for this deep dive into how one of the world's largest employers makes data-driven talent decisions. And as ever, get listening, get learning, and stay intelligent, folks. Have fun. Bye! Before we get on with the main event, I wanted to remind you that Lightcast kindly sponsors this podcast. Here's a very well-spoken chap to tell you more about them.
Lightcast is the global authority on labour market data. By collecting, analysing and refining profiles, job postings and market data globally, Lightcast provides actionable, data-driven talent intelligence, giving HR leaders the context to make better decisions. The world's top companies trust Lightcast to deliver clarity in a complex world of work. For more, visit lightcast.io.
Are you making data-driven talent decisions or just playing a guessing game? Today, on episode 37 of the Talent Intelligence Collective podcast, we're diving deep into the world of people analytics with someone who's been turning data into decision-making gold for years.
Yay!
Yay, indeed. In the virtual studio with me today is my brilliant co-host Toby Coulshaw, a Lightcast talent intelligent wizard. Just the two of us hosting today, as Alison is off on a much-earned leave, probably in a field with a horse somewhere. Give us a quick virtual wave, Toby.
Hello.
Hello. Now, today's guest is someone who's been revolutionising how organisations understand their talent acquisition data. He leads a team of business intelligence engineers, software developers, and data engineers at Amazon, and is an early adopter of AI in talent analytics with a certification to prove it. Please welcome Steve Kerwin. Steve, hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. For our audience, for some of them who might not know you, could you give us a quick intro, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So Steve Kerwin, I help manage the data and analytics organization for what would be known as the Amazon Stores Talent Acquisition Organization. Amazon has many moving parts, as most people would know. We help support those recruiting organizations that help hire all the brightest and best for the stores organization, from warehouses to physical stores to folks in office. Been doing it here at Amazon for a little over 8 years. Prior to that, worked for Kohl's corporate in Wisconsin doing sales and inventory, but have a background in HR and kind of found this really great opportunity to mix the two and learn about a space that 8-ish years ago was relatively new to a lot of folks. I've kind of enjoyed the journey, kind of seeing how things have been built up over the years.
Excellent. And we're looking forward to hearing more about that journey as well. For those of you that are new to the podcast, and we're picking you up every single episode, we're doing things a bit differently today, as you may have heard at the beginning. We're no Alison. So it's just me and Toby hosting. We'll kick off in a second with Toby doing his trademark market intelligence news roundup thing. And then we'll dive straight into a conversation with Steve about all things talent analytics, data, and how AI is transforming the recruitment landscape, and lots of other good topics, and maybe none of those. We shall see where we go. So, Toby, over to you. What's caught your eye over the last couple of weeks?
Well, thank you very much. Hot off the bat or the press or whatever is the joys of Trump and tariffs, which has been obviously a hot topic for the last couple of weeks and every which way, and it seems to be changing by the day and everything else. But where it ties into talent intelligence, CNN wrote a really interesting article about the manufacturing jobs and how it doesn't really align. What the plan is and what we can potentially do, they say doesn't match. So it quotes White House senior counsel Peter Navarro. I'm not sure how you say his name. Sorry, Peter. Write to me if you have issues with how I said that. But he said the plan's endgame is to fill up the half-empty factories that are now operating at low capacity around Detroit and the greater Midwest area. CNN highlight the fact that if we want to do that, if we do bring back all this manufacturing, production, etc., we don't necessarily, or the US don't necessarily have the skills to even do that. Obviously, it's been generations now where a large percentage of the manufacturing has been moving to different areas. And the latest JOLTS report was already saying that there's 1.9 million unfilled jobs in manufacturing projected by 2033. So they're in this situation where there's open jobs. The JOLTS report was saying there's 482,000 open jobs currently in as of Feb in manufacturing, and it was the Deloitte estimate of 1.9 million unfilled jobs. So we're already saying we've got these open jobs. We're already saying we can't service the current need, and if that need is then ramped up dramatically, do we have the workforce to then match that? So it's quite an interesting study. I think there's some more profound bits around that. Obviously, it touches on automation, it touches on education system and what we want out of a workforce, and it touches on a whole range of areas and elements beyond even will companies bring this manufacturing back. And there's been a number of firms that have already said explicitly, we're not bringing it back. This isn't something we're even going to do. And Trump's obviously changed his position on tariffs around some of the more high-tech goods, et cetera, as well. So it's a bit of a moving feast, whatever the word saying is. But it's interesting to me that some of the really core messaging coming out of the White House around manufacturing jobs and skills, it doesn't necessarily seem to be feasible.
Interesting. And I suppose it depends how hungry you are as to whether it's a moving beast or a moving feast. On the skill shortage, surely the generation of social media influencers and Twitch streamers can be retrained to be CNC operators and mechanical engineers, can't they? That's straightforward enough. That's a couple of weeks at night school, and then we're jobs are good, as they say.
What can it be? It kind of makes me think of. Do you remember? And this is showing my age, but years back, we in the defence industry, they started having drone pilots and drone systems, and the controllers they had as the first gen, no one could use. And then the controllers they used after that were literally designed on games controllers. I think it was the original
Xbox and PlayStation controllers. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And suddenly it was like, actually, these guys can just pick this stuff up and run it really, really fast. So, we jest, but maybe there is something in terms of how do you reposition the tech of the generations coming through to be able to use that in a manufacturing environment.
And I read, did I read or hear? I heard a theory around some of this is that it's a case of bring all the manufacturing in, at the same time develop AI and robotics that can do the vast majority of the manufacturing. And then by the time the two kind of meet in the middle, you've actually got the perfect situation. You don't need people anymore because robots are doing it. And you've got all the opportunity to look after yourselves and manufacture everything you need yourselves, and will put up the shutters and not let the rest of the world in. It was a bit of a conspiracy theory, I think, the one I read, but it was kind of interesting as a concept.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think if you're aggressive on it and it's sufficient focus. Let's be honest, the US has got the capital to push a lot of this stuff much more aggressively than anywhere else, probably in the world, except maybe China, etc. But I think there's definitely an argument to be made around that. I think that I have seen articles saying even if you want the warehouse space and the logistics to build these facilities, it's a 10-year cycle. I don't know. I think that if you're in a model where your entire presidency is based around this sort of jolting this back to life, I'm sure there's probably a load of red tape that could be skirted to get this stuff moving a bit faster. Investment skirted to get this stuff moving faster. Like I don't know. I think it's an interesting one where it's as much a political piece now as it is a workforce or an economical piece.
Well,
I think so. I think so.
I think, Alan, you touched on something interesting too. Like, I think it also speaks to the disconnect of folks' understanding of like what AI is or how you can use it. And I think there's just, I think right now what we're hearing is there's a general sense that there are enough people with the skills to bring back the labor force, but we're using it through that pseudo World War II-esque, like we have like the Rosie the Riveter is ready to like get on the line and like do all this work. And what you're highlighting, I think, is really interesting, which is, well, yes, but most companies are looking to save those costs and automate, and we're not necessarily thinking about where that's going to offset, right? So like you could almost argue in that 10-year span you just mentioned, we're going to have the same people arguing that there aren't as many jobs because we just automated everybody out of it. I think it just speaks to me that disconnect of AI is this ethereal thing to a lot of people that can do everything, but there's not enough training education. There isn't that bridge yet to what you were saying, like how many people, we'll talk, I'm sure, about that too, the whole human touch aspect of it, but like what are the skills you need to complement where AI can't, right? And how can we find that balance? Because otherwise right now it just feels like we're saying, there's everything can be done manually, and then we're being told by corporations, well, no, everything can be done with AI.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And it's almost, I think a lot of the rhetoric is thinking, as you say, of manufacturing circa 1960 or something. It's kind of this big assembly line of guys with hammers smashing down on a forge. And it's like, well, that's probably not what a lot of the manufacturing will look like.
Right.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
What else is happening then, Tapany?
Well, talking about the misunderstanding of AI and its implementation, the Shopify CEO, and he may not have been, I understand this wrong, but it was a nice pivot point for me. The Shopify CEO said essentially, if you don't have a baseline expectation of Gen AI in a new role, you can't get a sign off for a new headcount. So basically, every job that's coming through and passes his desk for approval, he's expecting all of the employees to have looked at the role, looked at the skills, the capabilities, the deliverables, and essentially say, why is this not being done by AI? The actual wording was, he won't sign off any additional headcount and resources until teams demonstrate why they cannot get what they want done using AI, which I think is fascinating because, and it's really long actual memo that was leaked, but so there's lots of stuff in it. But I find it interesting because it comes to Steve, your point, where there's the assumption that AI can do anything and everything, and then there's probably a reality of it can augment at the moment and it can facilitate. But there's a lot of kind of the RPA automation elements where it's just not built into infrastructure at the moment. It's not built into tooling. It's not built into the systems. So I find this fascinating because I can't think of many jobs, if I'm going to be honest, where the work could solely be done by AI. I think there are elements of most jobs that can be augmented or improved or changed with AI, but I can't think of many roles where you could sit there and go, I need to know, I can't demonstrate why they can't get what they don't want done using AI, if I'm going to be honest. So I thought it was quite an interesting and very visible piece.
I guess it comes down to if you've got a team of 10 people all doing kind of the same job, so the same activities and need the same skills, etc., etc. You don't have to automate any one of those individual jobs. you only have to automate 30% of all of those jobs to actually reduce your headcount by 3. It's kind of thinking more logically. It's very, to your point, Toby, there are very few standalone roles that every single part of it could be fully automated by AI. It's very, very unlikely. There's still some human elements. But what you can do is automate the hell out of a big percentage of a lot of people's roles, which does reduce your need for headcount. I guess that's where he's coming from, I imagine. That's where I'd be coming from anyway as a CEO.
Yeah.
I hope so. Steve?
Yeah. Which is equally scary if you're a manager of 100 people and you're being told you're not going to be doing any hiring, and actually we're going to let 30 of your people go either naturally or through some kind of exercise of redundancy. That's still for a manager of a function or a team can be a challenge.
And so I'll tread lightly, right? Like I agree that AI will be able to provide lots of efficiencies, and definitely for most folks, and where I think AI is coming up a lot, is those efficiencies translating to cost savings. And in this article, we're talking about headcount. We have conversations like that as well. What I struggle with, or what I think a lot of teams will struggle with, is a couple things. To offset that human touch with AI, it would imply that there's an equal understanding and adoption of AI, or if there's even AI capabilities. Like the infrastructure and platform components are already a separate topic of like, I don't know what capabilities they have, but the concern that I have, I think, is kind of that pyramid and the nuances to say that there will be, let's say, a central AI something that will be able to offset at every single lower level. To your example, Alan, like 100 people, and they're being told they can't, have more people, or they need to think about, offsetting their team by 30% with AI. That implies that AI model or capability or tool or whatever it is unique enough to that skill set, that case, to offset that work. And to do that at every single pocket team at scale is where I think right now we're in that imbalance of, there's a lot of energy around AI, there's a lot of excitement, and there should be, because it has all the amazing capabilities that we're still learning, but I still think we're still learning. We're making a lot of jump to conclusion statements that AI is going to solve all these things, and yet we don't have teams that have that level of understanding or that skill. It's the training aspect. I mean, people, I would almost guarantee on those teams probably have very light Excel capabilities, let alone understand how AI integrates, right? So I agree with where that is going to provide tons of efficiencies, other than I think there's a responsibility on these teams and these managers to also bring their teams along in this journey and make sure that they're aware of what these capabilities are, and kind of use that bottoms up approach to help determine where that human touch need, where that EI is needed versus something that could be automated.
Absolutely. I think this is a topic that we have on almost every single episode of the podcast, and we've had since November 23 when ChatGPT was released into the world, haven't we, Toby?
Yeah. It's been a continual piece, and I think there's also been that continual disconnect between the rhetoric at the leadership level and the reality on the coalface. I think there's been two very different worlds going on, and I'm still not convinced that's got any closer.
Yeah, it's interesting, without a doubt. We, as you know, you don't know this, Steve, but I run a HR tech consulting firm, and the amount of HR leaders who are, frankly, just confused about AI in terms of what it can do just within their relatively small functions. And but their CEO is at their back cracking the whip saying, hey, you've got to embrace AI. Why are you hiring more people? We don't need them, etc., etc. It's interesting. It's making up a big chunk of the work we're doing at the moment, is helping the whole education piece and helping them understand that actually sometimes the CEO is right, but sometimes helping them know how to push back on the CEO. Because I think this is a phrase I keep repeating all the time. Within, even just thinking about recruitment, you could automate 99% of most recruitment processes now, but it's not what you can do, it's what you should do.
Yep.
It's the bigger question. It's like, can we do this? Yes. Should we do it? Not always. And I don't think enough organisations are properly asking them themselves that latter question. So it's interesting.
I think that comes back to the main point I think Steve made earlier was it's really just understanding what value you're adding to a process. And if I'm an HRD or VP of HR or whatever, and my CEO is going, I want you to automate 99% of this, all it suggests to me is that they don't value that piece of the puzzle. And if there's no value, then maybe it should just be an efficiency gain. If it's really no value to a business, and we're picking on TA here just because you use it as an example, but like if TA really isn't of value to a business and they don't care about the candidate experience, they don't care about the quality of the person they're getting in, yada yada yada, then maybe it should be an efficiency gain. But I think it's being ruthless in terms of understanding what is really valuable to business leaders and what do they really want to get out of this. And if you are just being perceived as a pure cost center, a pure cost base to the company, and you're adding no value, then you probably are in a very difficult position. If that's how they perceive support functions, then you probably are in a difficult position. I think it's really around then re-articulating and reframing what your value proposition is.
And what I think is interesting, what Alan, you said too, I got like I'll pick on HR for a minute, right? Because I think I worked with HR data. There's so much of it that's very qualitative and not as easily tracked maybe as some TA processes, to your point. Like most of that probably could be automated from a TA standpoint, but from an HR standpoint, there's a lot more to it that goes case by case, right? And so most of what I hear, which I think is interesting, is the use of Gen AI specifically in cases like that. Everybody's excited about knowledge bases. Everybody wants to try and streamline the information, where to find it, how to try and standardize it, because of that statement that most of it is case by case, most of it is very policy driven or SOP driven, or it's a lot of documentation. So right now, I think a lot of push that people are seeking the use of AI for is to try and streamline that to enable employees to have that information more quickly or make it more available directly to the employees. But what I find interesting in these conversations, kind of tying it back to the fintech piece, or maybe that LT disconnect, is that there's an assumption that by doing that, we would need fewer people potentially to do the job. And what I hear from the HR professionals is, no. We need AI to help us do that so we can hone in on the things that we actually are trying to do that we can't get further on because we're bogged down by all of these qualitative pieces. And that's part of that disconnect as well, is that AI is welcomed, I think, by all. There's less of there should be less of a concern that the use of AI will result in less headcount. It should be, it's a terrible analogy, so forgive me, but it's one of these, like the automation or the human touch aspect. We've kind of said like it's kind of like losing a sense or losing that ability, where if we were to automate that boring stuff, automate the pieces that right now are kind of that tax on the employees, in theory, the other senses should heighten. We should have more ability to hone in or go deeper on where we can really use those personal skills, the EI skills, the things that we actually need people for. And I still see that line between the two conversations of no, AI will mean less people. And it's like, well, no, AI should mean more capabilities.
I think that's a great point. And I think that's where I could see a lot of work. Obviously, what I'm doing nowadays at Lightcast, but I can see a lot of work coming through. At the moment, we're seeing a lot of work around skills taxonomies and understanding the skills of an organization. But I think it's how that changes as roles evolve, as roles get merged and automated, or as they get redesigned. I think the skills you need for the future will absolutely change. And I think how people look at skills and how we assess skills is going to fundamentally change with that. And I know one of the bits I mentioned in the news that we probably weren't going to get to, but I'm going to throw it in there now anyway, was around how we assess in an era where we're seeing an increase of, say, homeschooling. And this was an article I wrote for the Talent Intel Collective last month. But I think what it touches upon is that we've got all these different types of assessment that are going to be needed in the future, where suddenly, you mentioned EIQ, that's going to come really to the fore. Like your ability, it's all the softer skills and the problem solving skills. Suddenly it's not those hard technical skills. So I think it's going to be a really interesting era, if I'm going to be honest, because there's going to be so much role redesign, and it's going to vary so wildly, I think, between companies as well. Suddenly your job title really isn't going to necessarily describe what your role and function and capabilities really are.
Should we
Yeah,
do?
definitely.
Should we do one more bit of news, Toby, and then we'll get on to the way everybody else is listening, really, which is the Steve combo.
Yeah, enough of me rabbiting on. Yeah, so last bit of news today is AI related again, and this time it is about Albert Sanager. I'm not sure how you say Albert's name. Sorry again, Albert. The founder and former CEO of Nate. He won't want me saying this anyway, so I don't really. I'm sure how I say his name is the least of his concerns. He's the CEO of Nate, which is an AI shopping app that promised a universal checkout experience. He's been charged with defrauding investors on last Wednesday, and this was from a press release of the US Department of Justice. Nate was founded in 2018, raised over $50 million from investors, and it's a really fairly high-profile piece. But it turns out that the whole time he's been relying very heavily on hundreds of human contractors in a call center in the Philippines to manually complete all these purchases. Which comes back to our point of, all that glitters isn't gold. AI is a very fashionable thing at the moment. There's a lot of investment into it. There's a lot of, all singing, all dancing, whistles going, etc., etc. But the reality is a lot of this stuff's really hard. And it's a kind of a fake it till you make it with I think, a lot of it at the moment, where it's actually there's probably brute forcing in the background that's allowing this stuff to really work. Whereas in reality, it's probably not as far along as a lot of people think or expect from an actual kind of industrial perspective at the moment. There's still a lot of apps and systems out there that are relying on human labor.
I'm laughing because as someone who's done a little bit of building of things over the years, I'm just thinking to myself, how is it that either a single person or lots of people collectively who've got $50 million to throw at a tech product haven't done a little bit more due diligence? I think if you'd have had a CTO spending longer than half an hour looking at that product, they'd have instantly gone, wait a second, either A, this isn't even possible, so I don't know how you've solved it, or B, they can actually hear the guy in the Philippines on the phone on the other end of the line. This is just bonkers. I really can't. I don't understand how people get away with it. Even it's. I could get it for a 10 grand, but $50 million. It's just insane. I really don't get it.
It in a weird way, it feels like it feels like the '90s bubble all over again, where everybody puts an I in front of their company name and trying to kind of pitch that vision that they're all going to make it, they're all going to be the next internet sensation, and you kind of give it time. I don't mean to make light of this or what happened with folks, but like I think everybody's riding that wave of the excitement of it, but people kind of have to prove whether or not they're investing in it effectively and if they can come out of it. Otherwise, I think we're going to see a lot more companies like this. They're going to front that it's an AI something. They're gonna say that they launched an AI thing, and everybody's going to get really excited behind it because there's just that lack of understanding what that means, other than they're on the forefront. They understand what this means. And you're going to look back and you're going to be like, oh, I remember Ask Jeeves. I remember sites where I would ask somebody to Google something for me. Like, there's just that piece that I think is going to play out, I think, in time as that dust settles and you realize where companies invested the skills, the time to actually create the foundations and build on that, as opposed to teams that are companies that are going to say, no, we're all AI, and really, it's unfortunately it's one of these where they're trying to buy themselves some time to figure it out.
And there's a ton of products that I see on a daily basis that have been released over the last couple of years, and I'd be surprised if 1% of them are around in 5 years' time, because so many of them are built on sand with absolutely no moat around them whatsoever. Most of them are just skins or layers on top of OpenAI or Anthropic or Gemini or Google, and all of those people who are actually owning the growth of their large language models and generative AI are building tools all the time themselves that can do exactly what all of these entrepreneurs are building. So they haven't got long, many of them. But they are absolutely, it's proper Wild West stuff, isn't it? A gold rush kind of thing. It's like, let's grab everything while we can because we know we're going to get found out soon. And let's hope there's enough stupid people who are willing to throw money at us.
It just screams to me. It feels like Theranos all over again with all these homes. And
Good reference.
I remember a few years back there was an AI, a TA company in AI, and when you looked at there was a tiny little asterisk next to their name. And I'm that sort of geek that looks at the asterisk. I'm like, where's this going on that website? What does it mean? And I remember scrolling down, and it said augmented AI, intelligence, and I was like, what's augmented intelligence? And then I scrolled a little bit further down, and it was basically humans working with tech. And I'm like, what wonderful. So your AI CRM platform is a CRM that a human uses. Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, that's Bob. Bob's our augmented AI guy, right? Like, it's not
exactly real. Exactly that. It's just wild. It's wild, and I get that people want to push this stuff. I get that they want to kind of fake it till they make it. I get that they want to make hay while the sun shines and all that. But I think it's just sending the wrong messages to leadership that this stuff's really easy and it's really accessible. And a lot of it really isn't. A lot of this is basing off the fact of like robotic process automation type piece and then an LLM front end or whatever. If RPA was easy, it would have been done years ago because that stuff's been around for much, much longer. But that's really hard as well. I think it's just sending all the wrong messages that it's really accessible and when you can just plug it in and play, and it just isn't. It just isn't at the moment.
And I make the joke, and I don't mean to. Like, this is also, it goes back to that education and that bridging, and where I think, let me say it a different way. Leadership should be pushing the envelope. They should be assuming that these things they're hearing about can do all these amazing things. But where they then need to turn their ears are to those teams or build the capabilities within their teams to then actually figure out where it's applicable. And I kind of make the joke sometimes that it's AI right now, and that has obviously been the loudest, most exciting phrase for the last couple of years. But before that, everybody wanted ML. And before that, everybody wanted science. And these are just the buzzwords that would get kicked around. And when you would find out what they truly meant, that was like, oh, that's a spreadsheet. Like, that's not machine learning, or like that's not really what I think you are thinking it is. But at least we're having a conversation. I know that you want more capabilities. You want to be able to leverage more technology to do these things. But there's just a general misunderstanding of where it can be applied, how it can be applied. And also, and again, I get to be the stickler, but reminding folks of the investment, the foundation, the infrastructure, the pieces that you actually need to do it, whether it's third party, first party, doesn't really matter. But people, like, that's the irony. You almost need more people to build that foundation than fewer people assuming that everything is ready off the shelf. And so it's a journey with how, I've seen it with people analytics and starting. Like, I was fortunate to start here when we didn't even have, we were still using like access databases and manually downloading things and putting it's just, it's been an amazing evolution, but I think it needs to come with a bit more bridging of, hey, there's this really amazing thing I'm hearing about. How would I actually use it? How much would it cost? What would we need to do it? And that, unfortunately, I think is where the fintech piece, like that they probably didn't figure it out in time before they canceled their contract in the Philippines.
That pivots us lovely into the next section, would you say, Alan?
I think it does. I did have a moment there, though, when I was reminiscing. I spent most of the late 90s and a little bit of the early 2000s building Microsoft Access databases.
There you go.
Some of which were very whizzy and very powerful. But thankfully, that time is behind me. So, yeah, right then. I think it is, to your point, Toby, time to put Stephen very, very firmly in the spotlight. I think when someone's leading analytics for Amazon's worldwide stores talent acquisition function, they've got a fascinating perspective, and we want to hear it. We're gonna take it in turns, Stephen. Normally, me and Toby kind of sit back and say nothing for the next 40 minutes, while Alison does all the hard work. But we're actually going to take the lead here, and we'll take it in turns at asking you questions. We'll pop in here and there. I'm really interested. During your 8 years at Amazon, you must have led a variety of different teams that are developing analytics across talent acquisition and possibly other areas. What's been the most surprising insight data has revealed about hiring trends or practices?
Oh, boy. That's a great question. I'll answer it in two ways, if I can, without getting myself in too much trouble. I think the insights are still coming, and what I mean by that is I think what I've learned most is that there's been a lot of journey to get the data and the foundations to be able to answer a lot of those questions more easily. The pieces that I think I have found interesting lately are kind of where candidate experience, the feelings that our candidates, our customers have about the process. Um, it's not new. It's not interesting. It's kind of back to these other conversations about how do you get the right workforce? How do you get the right people? There's pieces we're talking about that could be automated. There's push to automate things, but there's so much that our candidates are asking for more information about how things operate. What are the things that they should be upskilling on? What are the things that they should be more aware of, or what is it that maybe a company like Amazon is thinking so that they can be better prepared? And I say that in kind of an interesting way because you have a lot of people that might have some external experience elsewhere, but maybe not to the scale of Amazon's, or maybe not on the forefront of all this AI. And you're hearing companies, Shopify, saying that we expect everybody to have some foundational baseline. Our candidates and customers are asking for more information of what is it Amazon's trying to do, or where are we trying to go beyond the news so that they can be better prepared to be the best employees. They want feedback. They want to know, where they can improve. And most of the time we can't give them that legally or other. So it's not so much a data point that I'm providing you. It's more of a that human touch aspect that I've found interesting is like, how are we reconnecting with our customers and candidates to understand how we can put some of that into practice? But then to my former point, building the data structures in a way that we can actually get to insights more easily is still a work in progress, to be honest.
Look, I think that human touch piece, it's we talk about it often, but when you've got the data to back it up and to say, no, this is what the candidates want, and this is how it's having an impact of the funnel conversion metrics, or the time to hire, or the cost per hire, whatever it is. I think that's where it really gets powerful, because you have the data points to be able to back it up, rather than it's like a nice to have. So I think, although you say it's not a data point, I think it's, for me, it's incredibly important to track and measure that stuff, and I don't think enough folks do, if I'm going to be honest.
No, and you're like I'm not the first to probably say it, but like marrying the anecdotes with the data, right? That's what we do here. A lot of places do. Getting that anecdotal evidence at scale cleanly, right? Like it's that in and of itself is a feat, and that's where I think Toby, you and I have chatted a few times. Like, yeah, measuring the impact of it through time, through costs, through funnel, through things that we can optimize, like that's the ROI. That's what we should be doing. But it sometimes is a slog just to get the voices of our customers to know. And that's where I'm saying all I'm telling you all is what I hear through recruiting organizations. I don't have a ton of data that tells me that. We've had qualitative surveys, we've had other ways to capture that, but it's just been the difficulty to scale. And so that's where using talent intelligence, using outside finger on the pulse data, things that'll tell us kind of where people are struggling and how we can improve that. But yeah, it's just been interesting. I think that experience piece, that anecdotal piece, it's hot topic for sure, but it just takes a while, I think, to get the foundational data to be able to tie it together, to prove that we're improving, to prove the ROI. We have more work we can do there.
Yeah, yeah. And on that scaling piece, like obviously you've got one of the bigger TA communities to try and handle, probably in the world. Like there aren't going to be many TA teams knocking on the size of yours. Expanding your products to that sort of customer base, and kind of the product adoption to 3,500 users, whatever it is. What do you think the biggest challenges around that have been? Because I think a lot of the listeners and a lot of the people we've spoken to, it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. Not only that product rollout, but the product adoption, for whether it's self-service tooling or whether it's consulting. It's a real challenge. So how have you found that? What were the biggest challenges you found across scaling?
Yeah, and I can only sympathize with most folks, most teams. I've been that team, right? Like a lot of teams, I would probably guess were built to be a kind of hip shot ad hoc when I need data, get me my data type of team, right? And that right there is going to be the rock in everybody's shoe, because scaling isn't in the conversation, right? You are probably a dedicated team to a particular leader or organization, and I'm willing to bet you probably don't even have time to lift your head up to think about a roadmap, to think about a foundational infrastructure, replicable data, any of these things, because you're probably just putting out, like firefighting or blocking and tackling as things come, right? So the challenge, I think, has been getting leadership's, I don't want to say adoption, but like the buying into the ideology of Scrum and needing to have rhythms of business, needing to have a structure. I think that this isn't even a data answer. Like, this is just a way of working answer that I think has been the biggest. I don't want to say challenge. Like, I've had amazing leaders and teams that have adopted that idea, but it's taken time because they're so used to, like, oh, don't take away my resource, don't take away my touch point to data, because that's like my, that's my lifeline, that's my ace up my sleeve, and trying to explain, no. But what you're asking for is probably synonymous with a lot of folks. We could be doing this quicker if we could build, scalability into this. And so it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of either convincing or pushback and agreement from leadership, like this is the way this type of team should work. Once you have that buy-in to where you at least have reusable data, you have platforms or foundations to which you can build off of that aren't creating 5 different versions of the same thing, then I think it comes down to team structures and the ways you can interact with those customers. Because I'm usually, my team would hate me, right? Like, I'm usually the boring one to say 80-20, 80%. Most of the things are probably going to be the same conversations. These leaders are in the same meetings. These teams are doing a lot of the same work, or they're using a lot of the same systems, to where the pain points or the opportunities are probably very similar. And so that's kind of where you sometimes have to create these, I'll use the term flywheels, or use these parallel cycles to be building out future state. What are these 80% problems we're trying to reuse or solve for or automate? And then what are those 20% niche edge cases? Are we hiring a particular profile that's, way more complex than we're used to? How do we focus on that? Or is there a particular business that, let's say regionally has nuances or legal reasons that we need to focus on? Like, that's kind of where you have to look at it from that overall picture to try and get most people, most of the information, to drive the conversation and drive the insights. But it's challenging. Like, I'm incredibly fortunate to work with an amazing team, and have been able to, in a way, scale up our team to account for that over time, but not always, and not a lot of teams can. And so it's often down to those resource constraints. If you have enough people that can meet with all those customers, do you have enough developers to do this? And ironically, back to top of the call, also why we explore the use of AI, also where we try to figure out if there aren't time savings or areas that we can optimize. And again, it's not to reduce the headcount, it's to optimize the people we have, or to answer those more 20% questions, because we're spending all of our time, most of the time, blocking and tackling the same 80% over and over and over again.
That's a really good point. And actually, the team was something I wanted to definitely ask you a couple of questions around, because I don't know whether you're unusual in the analytics world, but when I read your LinkedIn profile and I saw the breadth of team that you were leading, so everything from BI engineers to software developers to data engineers and program managers, I like that. That's got to be a challenge. Because it's very diverse, and how each of those need managing is very different and leading. How's your own leadership approach had to evolve as your team has grown more diverse in both its skills and expertise?
So it didn't happen day one, right? And I'll credit Andrew Holtzclaw was the manager that hired me to come and start really building out this team well over 6 years ago, because I'd been working with HR, been working with finance comp. I was fortunate to kind of get a sense of like the people analytics space early on, but I really kind of went deep on the TA analytics space about 6 years ago. But I kind of told him day one, like, hey man, if you told me tomorrow that you would give me a team of software engineers and economists, I would tell you you're nuts. Because because and it's no disrespect to those amazing those skills. It's where they're utilized and where you
Yeah.
need them. And so what you've seen then as far as the team structure that I've had the honor of helping lead, it took a lot of time to build up that team to have the right pieces and kind of figure out, okay, where would software fit into this, or where would we use science? It wasn't a first thing in the top of my head. Like, it was something that we wanted to explore these capabilities. Again, I'm going to be cheesy, but much like the AI thing, I think it's an appendage. It's not, the core component, I think, for a lot of these things. Personally, I follow like a servant leadership approach, that upside down pyramid. People joke, call it more of like the Ted Lasso approach thing, but for many, many, many years, I've kind of followed that people first approach. And so it's also worked well, I think, because as we've known what the needs are, as we've learned what customers want to be able to do or what we don't have the ability to do, focusing on the people and what they can and can't do has allowed me to work with them, to provide room for them to breathe, build up a skill set, take a training, take on a stretch project of sorts, go sit with another team for a little bit, because of that balance again. And credit to leadership for giving us a little bit of that leeway. But if I can get that 80%, I need to invest in my team to be able to solve that next 20%, or how we keep refining what 80/20 means. But it's been a learning for me, of course. Like, I started out having a decent understanding of how to build a dashboard. Like, that's really where I started. And having to build out the foundational layers, I learned an awful lot more about engineering as I worked with way smarter people than me that would explain to me where it connects and how we need to do certain things. And then you tack on governance and security, and then you tack on scalability. And I'm the quiet, dumb one in the room most days with my team, but my role is to just make sure that they have that ability to learn what they need to learn, showcase what they know how to do, put them in the right spots, challenge them in areas that might be new or uncomfortable. But it's the puzzle pieces to me, is like making sure that we have the right cross functionality, the right team that can support each other with the right skills. But we're not, I'm not hiring 50 software engineers tomorrow, or AI engineers tomorrow. It would be amazing to have that to explore, but it would be exploring. And that's all I'm saying, is like, this journey has been more of learning what we can do and then piecing those things together, rather than saying day one, you're going to have, an army of people with all these skill sets and I've got to somehow navigate. Like, it's been a slow burn, I guess, is the answer.
My team often wish I was the quiet, dumb one in the room. I could qualify fully for the second half of that, but not the former, unfortunately.
I'm sure. I say quiet in my head. I'd like to think I'm being quiet. I'm sure my team will listen to this and they'll be like, "Yeah, no." But
the ignored one rather than quiet.
There you go. The ignored one. I sound like I'm quiet, yes, but I definitely try. I definitely try to sit back and let them drive, because they're going to be. I get to ask the dumb questions. I get to ask "Hey, isn't these how these things connect? Because this is what we're trying to achieve." And then I'm able to piece those things together with the team. So yeah, it's more them than me, but no, I mean, it really just comes down to providing them with the right work, challenging work, opportunity to build on that work. And I've just been lucky to have folks that want to do that kind of stuff. They want to learn, they want to take on tasks that are kind of awkward, but then they come away with it with a new perspective. And then I ask that perspective be shared with the team. And suddenly you get all these light bulbs and unlocks of, oh, that thing that customer asked. Now we have these two, we just, set up a Lambda function that can do that. Let's trigger that, right?
And that's
it
the
just gets
beauty, isn't
exciting.
it, of having smart people. You can set them off in the general direction of where you want to get to, but not be too prescriptive in terms of the route they've got to follow or the towns they need to visit on the way. And they do amazing things.
Yep.
If you are too prescriptive, then the journey's quite boring and it'll be fairly vanilla. So, but you've got to have great people around you, and it sounds like you've got just that.
Definitely.
Excellent.
One question I've got, and it's just changing tracks. I can't even talk today. Slightly.
Changing tack.
I was thinking tracks, like a road.
That
I was
kind of
like, that
works
makes
as
more
well.
sense.
That works as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, there's a fork in the road. I'm going down one of them.
There we go.
So, slight change in direction, I'm going to say, is we've been talking a lot about kind of talent acquisition analytics, and I think a lot of people there think traditional funnel conversion analytics, etc. One element I think is coming through to the fore more and more at the moment is effective demand planning and operational forecasting. And I think that's also kind of tied in with a lot of workforce planning teams are getting more pressure to move, ironically, away from kind of the more strategic workforce planning that's your 5-10 year plan, and actually having really aggressive and accurate operational planning. What's your take on that from a TA perspective? Do you think it's something that is evolving? Is it needed? Is it room to grow as an industry? Like, what's your take on that?
Well, and again, I'll tread lightly in the narrow perspective that I've potentially had, and I love these conversations, and part of the collective. Like I see a lot of folks that ask these questions too, because I think what you're poking at is that it seems it's still siloed or bifurcated in the sense of, is it an HR talent management problem to solve, or is it a TA problem to solve? And it's that ever fabled life cycle that I don't see the handshake as much as I would like to. And that's where I was saying I buried a moment ago, but having started working with HR, having worked in talent management, understanding the types of metrics, the data we look at, and also like the employee experience, how much of that impacts TA.
Mm-hmm.
But then it oftentimes, most conversations I have, it's a leaky bucket problem to fill for TA, and so TA is scrambling to try and get all of this TM data to essentially forecast how many people they think they're going to have to hire. Um, man, it's been interesting to see these conversations to where it's still an industry challenge, I guess. And so I simplify it, and I can do this because why not, right? That trifecta of like your finance, your employee movement, and your recruiting processes, right? Like finance right now is hopefully helping dictate how much you can grow or not, right? And ideally grow. Um, Usually that is also trying to bridge with business teams or managers to understand, and if we grow, what's your staffing model look like? Where would you grow? Like how many, like what types of roles and what locations would you need? Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm sure like conversations like that are happening potentially. Where I've seen challenges is how much of that information is captured and then aggregated up or scaled. It's very difficult to get a lot of that boots on the ground feedback of, oh, I want a software engineer in the UK. Well, I want one in Spain. Well, I want a program manager. Um, there's a lot of reconciliation that has to happen, because if you don't have very clean systems that toll gate the number of people you can basically say I can grow by, you end up with way more than you actually need. I'm going to say two. You're going to say two. We get to the leader, it's going to look like four, and he's like, well, no, we had two. Like, you guys have to figure that out. So just landing on the staffing models, I think, is a component of it. But let's assume we have that. Let's assume we have a master spreadsheet that says, yep, this is how many people in what areas we want. Great. In theory, that would give TA the roadmap to say these are the people that we need to hire. But then you've got the talent man, you have the employee experience, you have attrition, you have promotion, you have things that will change throughout the year. And so oftentimes I see that kind of being solved in both camps separately, because each camp arguably owns that component, right? And I think the struggle has just been how to bring those two together more cleanly to be able to say, okay, we all agree that this is where a company wants to go, or how many people we believe we're going to need. Let's make sure we're looking at that holistically as to the right people we're trying to hire, the right skills we're looking for, the time we need them by. Are we getting that information early enough? To your point, Toby, is it something we can start, early enough and plan the year out, and then we're just blocking and tackling the changes? Or is it like a throughout the year process, which is typically kind of how it happens? You get a lot of beginning of the year excitement, and potentially you get targets for where we need to head, but it's going to change. And so you've got to kind of create these always on pipelines, these always on models where you're always going to be hiring certain profiles. So you need to be engaging with those candidates, even though you don't know where they're going to be hired yet. I'm rambling now because I've been talking about this topic probably since I joined Amazon, and I've been talking to people in the industry for years because I find it fascinating. Like that full cycle of engaging with someone to come to a company based on a role we know we need, and then make sure that that employee has all that they need to be successful while they're here until their very last day. And then what does that process look like both for incremental and for backfill hiring? Like I haven't seen a model yet that has done that at scale, unfortunately. But that's my answer, is that I just think we keep trying to solve it as it's a finance problem. No, it's an HR problem. No, it's a TA problem. And I would love to see those hands shake or come together a little closer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I don't know if there's a systems, processes, tools, silos, goals. I think there's just a whole heap of stuff that's built into that as to why so many struggle with it. But I think it's a difficult. The reality is it's difficult. It's really hard stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't be doing it. And like when we can't even necessarily agree on some very simple definitions, like what's your attrition rate? Well, what do you mean? Do you mean annually? Do you mean rolling 6 months? Rolling 3 months? Do you mean etc.? Like can't even agree on time to hire. Do you mean time to offer? Do you mean time to start? Time to hire? Like there's just so much nuance between silos, between functions, how people account for things. It's just difficult. It's just really difficult.
Yeah, and I think and the reason I say we struggle is to the end customer, to the businesses that we support. I mean, I know they are fully aware that there are HR organizations versus recruiting organizations, or in most cases, they're probably one and the same, right? Like the recruiting is technically an HR function in its regard, but most businesses don't understand that it's disconnected, or they don't understand why. And literally every day, not every day, but literally every quarter at least, we get asked for, hey, tell me which candidates or which pipelines are yielding, employees that we should be investing in. Where are we seeing the highest return from a quality standpoint, from a retention standpoint? This is a great example of like where TA doing their best work to find the right people for the right role is also proving that they are, resilient, or they were the right fit. Now, there's that break though. I don't know what happens once that employee starts. I don't know how many managers they had. I don't know if they had to relocate, or we have, news about return to office and things that are going to impact them personally. There's so many other factors that we lose sight of, and the business will come back to that recruiting organization and say, hey, tell me more about what happened with that employee, and tell me more about their talent management experience. And obviously, when you operate in silos, that recruiting organization isn't going to be scoped to know those answers. And so then it creates this bridge that requires more of this committee to now go to HR and say, hey, tell me more about what's going on. Tell me more about this. And it just, unfortunately, it's just not it's not an existing process today, where it's right now, it is that kind of handoff that's happening a lot. And then that unfortunately means you're telling two sides of that story at different times. You're trying to paint a holistic picture. And when you imagine that's happening at every director or VP level, practically every month or quarter throughout the year, like it really doesn't scale well. And I'm not saying that top down is going to be the easiest either, but I do think there's just opportunity to recognize that there are programs within HR, programs within TA that each team should respectfully own. But the vision is really just to make sure that we're getting people in the right quality, the right time, the right cost, making sure that they also have a good experience as an employee, that we're offering right talent development opportunity, that we're investing in these people, or we're performance managing appropriately where we should. And how are those cycles continuing? Incremental versus backfill, incremental versus backfill. Like there just needs to be, I think, a more holistic conversation about that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I almost went off on a tangent then on my thoughts on quality of hire, and I'll save that for over a beer because it would be explicitly. Yeah, no, not doing that one.
Okay.
But it drives me mad. Genuinely, it really drives me mad. It's like IT being on the hook for how good a software engineer programs. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Final
We can get into
thought.
it, man,
Obviously,
if you want to.
I
a whole other
suspect
hour.
we'd need another episode.
Yeah, it's all good.
We would. Obviously, you've gone through that whole kind of journey and that life cycle, and we're currently at a kind of a new dawn, I think, in terms of talent, recruit marketing analytics, or talent acquisition analytics, or people analytics, et cetera, as a field. I think we're all kind of feeling a bit of a renaissance, et cetera. But for those companies that are just at the beginning and the individuals just at the beginning, what advice would you give to them to build out their talent acquisition analytics capabilities?
Oof. So I'll tell that cheesy story, and then I'll probably end up back at the same foundational answer that I often give. Um, the reason I enjoyed switching to TA and focusing on TA for as long as I had is how much the recruiting organizations know. And I'm not knocking any other every customer is going to know what their businesses need, but the level of detail, the level of accuracy that they understand what a system should show them, what the processes show them, really helped shape me and my understanding of what good looked like, what the data needed would look like, or even what kind of insights they would need. That being said, to build out a team, and I'm speaking to folks that probably have like one or two people, or they're trying to figure out, as I imagine, or how do you get their head above water to build out a future plan, right? Again, cheesy and forgive me for repeating it, but like I've said it 1,000 times, like I can't build you bay windows and sunroofs on a house if I don't have the basement laid. I need to know the sources of data. I need to know the frequency. I need to know the granularity of this. Like I need to know what the customers are looking for so I can build out that right framework, that right foundation. If you can get that latitude to focus on that, if you can get that ability to build out the long term, it's going to pay dividends in the long run. And if you can build that out and focus in on, reusable data, connecting those dots, don't go nuts. Like you don't have to have 1,000 data sets, but like I'm sure that there are categories of data or systems that are used that you can get to. Okay, I'll use the ones that we have, but candidate information, requisition information, funnel information, interview information, structure it in a way that you can connect those more easily, and then really just understand from customers like that 80-20, like what is it that everybody is struggling with? What is it that leadership is looking for? I would bet most things. I'm looking around my room if there's anything I could pony up, but I would bet something that most teams are looking for that gap to goal, fabled employee life cycle. How many people are we supposed to hire? When do we need them by? How many do I have today? What's my gap? And then factor in potential movement, factor in pending starts, factor in a lack of requisitions, and then within that story, how many do I truly need to hire, and what do I need to go do that? Within that story, I think then you're going to start to get into all the really interesting nuances of cycle times and conversions, and then you start to tack on the recruitment marketing or the sourcing aspects of it and hone in on that, and getting reach out conversions, or maybe diversity and looking at that attribution. Like it all builds down from that, but you have to have that foundation. You have to have that ability to build on top of it. Otherwise you're just going to be doing it piecemeal, and you're going to be telling disjointed stories, and you're going to be doing it 10 times the same way, maybe, but probably not at scale. So I don't know if that answers your question, Toby.
I think that answers it very well. Sorry, I'm not Toby, but yes.
Oh, sorry, Alan.
I'm going to answer on his behalf. Yes, Toby does answer it really well.
It's a cracking answer.
It is. It's like a play. You've literally just given somebody a playbook there, Steve. I think that's fantastic, and even more so based on the previous answer. A follow-up episode would be great, so we can explore this and a quality of hire with Toby as well. I mean, you could just sit back in that one, Steve, while Toby rants for half an hour, I think. So fantastic. Looking at the time, which has absolutely flown by, I think it's time for me to bring the show to a natural or relatively natural close. Steve, this has been fascinating. How was it for you, as they say?
It was awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it was a lot of fun to talk through. Appreciate you listening to me. I often joke that I've kind of turned into the old gentleman on the park bench that kind of talks to himself and feeds the pigeons because I've been doing it a long time. But if folks are willing to listen, I'm happy to chat anytime.
Oh, well, I've seen your LinkedIn profile. You're definitely not as old as Toby, and you're definitely not as old as me. So no, you're fine, and you were very interesting to listen to. We've had a lot of fun. That was brilliant. So to our listeners, hopefully you've enjoyed today's data-driven conversation as well. So make sure you share it with your teams, your colleagues, anyone you think might want to make sense of the world as it aligns to talent and talent acquisition data. Stephen's shown us there's so much you can do, and if you ask the right questions, then you get the answers that actually move things forward. So as always, folks, stay curious, stay analytical, and most importantly, stay intelligent. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Before you go, I want to remind you about our generous sponsor, Lightcast. Here's that well-spoken fellow again to tell you about their amazing product.
Lightcast is the global authority on labour market data. By collecting, analysing and refining profiles, job postings and market data globally, Lightcast provides actionable, data-driven talent intelligence, giving HR leaders the context to make better decisions. The world's top companies trust Lightcast to deliver clarity in a complex world of work. For more, visit lightcast.io.